ever since Chris Paul's been the head coach, he's had Arroyo as his sidekick for the offensive side of the Ducks football team. And every year they got like 2 wins better, 3 wins better until they finally became that Rose Bowl winning team that we know now. And for me, I'm just like, I know there's been some complaints with the offense, but the offense looked completely fine for me the past couple of years, especially last year, having that Herbert didn't really have to throw a lot, even though he's that guy as a quarterback. We mainly were doing running by committee. And so you bring in a guy like Joe Moorhead, who was 14-12 at Mississippi State, 2-0 in the Egg Bowl. You can get excited, but then also for me, it doesn't really matter who our new OC is because of Mario Cristobal.
Yeah.
Like what he's done for the program, like I don't think anyone since Chip Kelly has done that. So I'm excited, but we'll see.
Yeah, there is that Mario Cristobal energy. That is that aura that everyone is always going to be, hopes are high for what the offense can achieve. Interesting about both of these coaches, Marcus Arroyo left to go be the UNLV head coach. He took that head coaching opportunity. It's going to be interesting, me just, watching how that happens, what kind of a head coach he is, because what we saw with Joe Moorhead was that it really is a different experience being an offensive coordinator and being a head coach. An offensive coordinator, I mean, you're talking about play calling, you're talking about scouting the opposition, and you're very much in the nitty-gritty of, within the 60 minutes of a football game. Coach sort of sets the tempo for an entire program, has to do the bulk of the recruiting work, and has to sort of put together that staff of coaches underneath them. That's one of the things that Mario Cristobal also gets a lot of credit for, is just a really great team of coaches under him that he can rely on. And Joe Moorhead's time as a head coach wasn't the best. It wasn't terrible, but it certainly wasn't the best, and that's why he's back to being an offensive coordinator, because Mississippi State didn't want him. And so looking at Moorhead coming in to Oregon, I still think there's a lot to be excited about sort of just his offensive history as a coordinator, his play style, and I think Mario Cristobal is really happy with the selection. I think Mario Cristobal feels like he got the best guy for the job, and I think this is going to be a good fit that'll work out.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that we're talking about new OC because it's Joe Moorhead. But I'm also looking at our defense, and our defensive coordinator, he's been kind of questionable the past couple of years, especially with that secondary. We're going to get into that later in the show, but I feel like if we get a new defensive coordinator, if Oregon gets a new defensive coordinator with Joe Moorhead and Mario Cristobal as the head coach, that's trouble, not only for the Pac-12, but for the whole country. So I don't know. It's a very good move. Oregon, it was necessary. Like, it's good to see a guy like Marcus Arroyo to get that type of opportunity to become a head coach of a good football team. UNLV, they've had some good products coming out of that school, played well in the NFL. So it's a good opportunity for him, not only for him, but for Oregon as well, to get Joe Moorhead.
Yeah, I think it's definitely everyone's excited about where they've ended up. Looking back at Marcus Arroyo, you're sort of touched on with the defense as well. A lot of Oregon's, Oregon fans' complaints have been that the expectations are high, the talent levels are obvious, how much talent is out there on the field, and that they perhaps just weren't meeting their potential. That in terms of what the players and the big names that were out there on the field and the way they actually performed sometimes was just falling short, and there was some potential success that was lost. And that blame was put on the coaching staff and just saying that you're not doing these guys right. And I'm going to ask you, Izzy, specifically Marcus Arroyo, from what you've seen over the last year, do you think he got the most out of the players on the offensive side of the field, or do you think he left some on the table for maybe Joel Moorhead to take to another level?
Well, that's a kind of loaded question, but the thing about that question is because I was looking at Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Herbert definitely – he could have done so much more last season. He was in the Heisman conversation like as preseason went on, but then as the season went on, Oregon really didn't do a lot of air attack. So quarterback-wise, definitely could have done a lot better with Herbert. Otherwise than that, he did a great job with the running backs because I'm a Niners fan, so I love seeing running back committee. Like, it's always great to have that number one running back, but if you can have running back by committee, that's the best thing you can have as not only as a team but as a school, because if one guy gets down, you still have 2 to 3 other guys who can still play and make those plays. And especially running back committee, they usually have different types of backs. You have a power back, you have a shifty guy, you have someone who can do it all, Christian McCaffrey type that can catch out of the backfield, run it up, break tackles. So definitely he left a lot last season, but it was with Herbert.
Yeah.
Now, new season, Joe Moorhead, new quarterback, same running backs. So that's my answer to your question.
Yeah, I got to agree with you with the way that the running backs played. I mean, any offensive coordinator could have easily just said C.J. Verdell's our running back, and that guy's going to play almost all the snaps. But a lot of what Arroyo started to get credit for at the end of the year was just pure creativity, whether it was handing the ball off to Jalen Redd or the way that the running backs were used and the different situations they were used in. I mean, all the way down to a little thing like Cyrus Habibi-Likio being the goal line back, somebody that had a few incredible games, had some great goal line touchdowns, and it felt like all the running backs had games where that was just going to be their day to shine. And that's something that Marcus Arroyo, you could say, is bringing out the best in a group of guys that maybe would not have performed that way. Maybe everything about that scheme sets up perfectly for them to just dominate the rushing game. And there was just a lot of consistency as well from the rushing attack. So I agree with you that from the quarterback perspective, there was something left behind, but you couldn't have asked for more as an offensive unit with the way that they were just able to move the ball week after week for the most part.